God damn. Are you kidding me? From LAX to Amsterdam, if I'm correct, I'm not a flyer. I'm afraid of heights, so I won't fly that much. But are you kidding me? No, that is impossible. 2,500, one ticket, 3,800 euros. We're talking about euros right here. 1,300. Hello, and welcome to the channel. My name is Joan, and I'm a typical Dutchman. And I often wonder, why is there such a big gap in how Europe and the United States understand each other? Why do American customs and cultures seem so different and yet familiar? To find answers, I react to American videos to find out where this difference is coming from. And if you're curious too and want to learn along with me where this difference is coming from, then like and subscribe to the channel so we can make those gap a bit smaller. And for now, I'm going to react to the cost of living comparison from America versus Europe after living abroad for 1 year. And I do not know in which country he is living. I will find it out. Oh, it's standing right on it. It says, why don't you see it? Yeah. It says living in Europe, specifically the Netherlands. So the Netherlands comparison, and the video is from, oh, not so far away. It's only 6 days. So from a week. So I can react to it because we are close in the same time of the year, same. So it's nothing that much different. So let's see what he has to say about the cost of living in the Netherlands after 1 year.
Growing up in the US, I always held two preconceived notions about Europe. The first one was that Europe was a worse place to live than the US.
Yeah, I know. It's looking at my previous video. That's what I'm talking about. The propaganda that has been taught in the US, accidentally or on purpose, I don't know, gives such a negative view of Europe, which most of the time is not correct. That's why I want to take a look at it and hopefully close that gap between, because the understanding should be there.
The second one was that Europe was a more expensive place to live than the US. In my recent videos, I have already debunked the first preconceived notion that I, as well as many other Americans, have held for most of their lives by showcasing that Europe is in fact a better place to live than the US. That said,
Thank you.
now it's time to debunk that second preconceived notion that Europe is more expensive than the US. Now, I think a big part of the reason why Americans hold this belief is because the only people, generally speaking, the only Americans who are traveling to Europe are people who are well off. So I think because of that, we sort of develop this idea that if rich people or well off people, upper middle class people, are traveling to Europe, then it must be an expensive place to be.
Yeah, and I often wonder because there are a lot of military bases in Europe, way more than I'm comfortable with, but there are a lot of military bases. The uh, the military personnel that lives there should bring back information to the United States, which stating that it would be nice to live in Europe and they have conversations with locals that they understand. Yeah, I don't get it. Why is this information from all those servicemen who are coming back from Europe to America not cycling through in the society as in these preconceptions are not right?
That
But this is about the income.
is not true. In fact, even if you just wanted to travel to Europe, most of the money that you spend will be on the actual flight itself. The only thing expensive about most of Europe is just getting there from the US. But once you land, once you touch down on the runway, oftentimes you'll find that it's actually a lot cheaper than the US. Even in the
I gotta take a look at um, how much cost a flight from the US to Europe. Let's say Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Let's take a look. Somewhere, because I'm not gonna do it, for a adult economy class. Yes, one, go. Look, and then from, I'm wrong. Okay, from LAX to, come on, Los Angeles International to Amsterdam, 16th. Look for it. God damn. Are you kidding me? From LAX to Amsterdam, if I'm correct, I'm not a flyer. I'm afraid of heights, so I won't fly that much. But are you kidding me? No, that is impossible. 2,500, one ticket, 3,800 euros. We're talking about euros right here. 1,300, 23.77, 25, 23, 25. And when I say I want to go from Amsterdam to LAX, that's what I did the first time. Let's take from cheap tickets Amsterdam to Los Angeles. We're talking about Amsterdam 30 Mai, Los Angeles International Airport, 505. Damn. Okay, I'm convinced it's expensive to fly from America to the Netherlands or to Europe in general. I see Düsseldorf and Brussels. This is Belgium. This is Germany. And then they say it's not good to go to Europe. Yeah, if you make it impossible to fly over, well, let's continue.
the countries that provide an objectively higher quality of life. And in this video, I want to provide a case study from my own life and my own experiences to show you just how much of a scam living in the United States of America actually is. Now, as I go throughout the cost of living breakdown, I'm going to touch on individual categories pertaining to the costs that I incurred both in Europe and in the United States of America.
He's calling it a scam. Interesting.
And to be fair, the expenses from the US are from 2022 when I had my own apartment. So I don't know how inflation has affected some of these prices, but I can only assume that things have gotten more expensive. For the European expenses, for the expenses from the Netherlands, I'm speaking on my experiences from as recently as this year, 2025.
Yeah, and I also can verify if he's telling the things that are right because I'm from the Netherlands too.
So, again, this is just my own experiences. Your experiences might vary. That said, the first category that I want to talk about is rent. What
Rent. Yeah, okay.
is the difference in rental costs in the US compared to the Netherlands? Well, for me personally, my rent here at a US apartment in the DFW area, which has a relatively moderate to low cost of living by American standards, at least for the size of the city that it is, was $1,197.95 per month.
Per month? $1,200 a month?
That's not that bad, especially for the kind of apartment that I had. Honestly, in retrospect, that was a really great deal. Now, the apartment was kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I was surrounded by nothing but old people and families. I didn't have anybody in my age range within my general vicinity, but it was still a nice apartment and an objectively nice area, a very wealthy area, if you will. $1,197.95. Also, another caveat was that this was on a 12-month term. So, of course, anytime you get an apartment, the longer of a term you secure, the less rent you're going to pay on a per month basis.
Okay, that's something that does not happen in the Netherlands. You pay your rent, and that's it. It's, the longer your leash will not say the lower your rent costs. That's how it works here.
And I would imagine that this also applies to the Netherlands. Now, in the Netherlands, I did not have an actual apartment. Instead, I rented an Airbnb, and this was only for 1 month.
He rented an Airbnb, completely furnished. Okay,
So maybe if I had rented
that's more costly.
this Airbnb for 12 months, the price might have been a lot lower than it was.
Uh, Probably, yeah, probably because you rent. Yeah, there's an Airbnb. It's uh, privately owned. Yeah, yeah. Then it could be that when you rent it longer. Yeah,
But this was also pretty much the cheapest Airbnb that was a full apartment that I was able to find. And that price was in US dollars, by the way. All of this is going to be in US dollars so that we don't have to do a whole lot of extra conversions and whatnot. But the rent, so to speak, was $1,381.98. So
yeah. For an Airbnb, completely furnished for an entire month. Nice. Yeah.
so it was actually more expensive than my American apartment that I had. And if I'm being honest, it probably wasn't quite as nice, but it was still very nice. It had its own backyard. It was on this vacation camping ground place. I don't really know the full extent of what that place was.
Yeah, at a bungalow park, we call it. It's where all the holiday houses are built in. And that's why the price is a bit higher because you're renting a house for a month. So you pay more because, for example, you're renting this month and then it will be empty for 3 months, and then someone else rents it for 2 weeks, and then another one rents it for 4 weeks, And that in between, the costs are still there. In between, the houses need to be cleaned. In between, there are other costs of maintenance, and that's, yeah, brought back to the rent price. Yeah, but if you don't take this type, yeah, then you will be a bit more cheaper if you're actually going to live in. Maybe he's talking about it because he's living abroad for 1 year. So I think he will talk about something else.
But it was just in a nice area in general. It was a bit desolate as well, definitely surrounded by primarily old people, probably a very similar demographic to the city that I had lived in the US in my apartment. But it was more expensive, but again, that's probably because I only rented it for 1 month.
Yeah,
As for actual apartments, the price varies quite a bit. Obviously, in a place like Amsterdam, you're going to be paying much more than the $1,100 or the $1,200 that I spent on my American apartment. You're probably going to be spending minimum $2,000 per month, and that's if you're lucky. But
in Amsterdam, yeah, I think so. Let's take a look if I'm correct. For an apartment of 60 square meters, between 1450 and 1900 euros a month. For an apartment, that's usually an apartment without, it's an unfurnished apartment. There's a kitchen, that's it. All the things you have to do. 60, wow, in Amsterdam. Yeah, between 1400 and 1900 euros, give or take between the 1500 and $2,000.
for a lot of Dutch locals, even if they have to pay this high renting cost, a lot of times they receive money from the government that offsets the rental costs.
Yeah, I didn't know if you would touch on that subject. Yeah, if your um, income from your job has a certain maximum, no, doesn't reach a certain maximum, then you get extra money from the government to compensate your rental costs versus your costs that you have versus your income, so that your maximum rental cost is the maximum that you can afford with your income of your job. And it means also that you can get extra healthcare budget from the government. But I think you will touch that subject too.
So, just as one example, just from somebody that I met in the Netherlands, I'm not going to reveal who it was, but this person was renting a 3 bedroom house for, I want to say, around 700 or 800 a month.
3 bedroom house. Yeah, so we're talking about 100 and 120 square meters house rent. I have a 120 square meters house. I bought this house, so I don't rent this house. This house is mine. Yeah,
3 bedrooms for 700 to 800 a month.
yeah,
You will not find that here in the US. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're in the slums of Detroit, Michigan. I don't care if you're in St. Louis, Baltimore, or any other place with an exceedingly high crime rate.
yeah. But that's because the guy he's talking about, the Dutch guy, is not living in Amsterdam. He will be at least a couple of, well, let's say 20, 30 kilometers away from main Amsterdam, and then you don't pay that much rent.
You are not going to find a 3 bedroom house that's going for 700 a month. Now again, a lot of this is because the government sort of helps their citizens out, as they should. But that's a different discussion for a different day.
Yeah.
We've already talked about that in other videos. This is purely about the cost of living. And even though my experience showed that the rent was more expensive in the Netherlands, I would imagine that for the average Dutch person, the rent is a lot cheaper. 1300 is probably a bit of an anomaly by Dutch standards, assuming that you're not living in Amsterdam or somewhere like that. And
Yeah. If you have to pay a rent that high, then my advice will be buy. That's what I did. At the moment that my rent came up to almost 900 euros, I bought a house with, of course, a rent, no, a mortgage, and my mortgage price was about 600 a month. So it's 600 for your own house as a mortgage,
even
and that's what a lot of people do.
if you did assume that you live in Amsterdam, then it would only be fair to compare Amsterdam to a place like New York or LA, where the rent is probably even higher. You're looking at 2,500 a month minimum. And then when you add on all of these other expenses, you can see that it'll get spooky very, very fast. That said, the next expense that we need to talk about is groceries. In the US, and this is just an average that I pulled from 2022. So, just an average from when I was living in that apartment, getting my own groceries, I spent $431.38 for groceries
Mm-hmm.
per month for myself, just for myself.
One person groceries.
In the Netherlands, in that Airbnb, when I was responsible for all of the groceries for myself and my girlfriend, so
Oh,
this is groceries for two people,
for two, yeah.
I spent a total of $468.36. So while I did spend a little more on groceries, again, this was for two people.
Yeah.
So I spent literally what, 37 more dollars for a whole extra person.
And this is even expensive. I guess in groceries for two persons, if you're going to the right shops, then you are about 200, 250 for two persons. Yeah. Then he lived luxurious.
And on top of that, I was actively bulking, which means that I had to get a lot more food. I had to eat way more calories than I did when I was living in that American apartment. So I was buying more food, even if just for myself. Now,
He was what? Bulking?
I was actively bulking, which
I don't know what that is. If anyone can tell me what it is.
means that I had to get a lot more food. I had to eat way more calories than I did when I was living in that American apartment. So I was buying more food, even if just for myself. Now,
I guess he meant getting more muscle, and that's why you need more protein. And if you need more protein, you need to have more meat and eggs, etc., etc. Yeah, okay, then you will be more expensive, but still, 400. Yeah,
assuming that because I was bulking and I was eating a lot more than my girlfriend, I only accounted for 2/3 of that expense, I would have spent $312.24 on groceries for myself. And on top of that, in the US, I primarily shopped at Walmart and Target. Whereas in the Netherlands, I shopped exclusively at Albert Heijn,
oh,
which to my knowledge is the most expensive grocery store
yeah, it is. It is the most expensive grocery store you can find.
in the Netherlands. So this was me going to the equivalent of a Sprouts or a Whole Foods market, which would be the higher end grocery stores here in the US.
Yeah, the difference in pricing for the same product at, for example, Albert Heijn and another shop is, 40 cents, 50 cents a difference pro product.
And spending $312.24 per month on healthy foods with vegetables, fruit, all of that, and on a bulk. So again, eating probably 30 or 40% more food than I would have been eating in my American apartment. $431.38 for American groceries, eating primarily frozen vegetables and things of that nature. Again, major, major difference. And by the way, at the end of this video, I'm going to tally all of these expenses up and we're going to look at the total amounts. So just stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, let's talk about utilities. So in my American apartment, I spent in total per month about $142.19 for utilities. And the breakdown is as follows. For electricity, I spent $53.07 per month. For water, I spent $33.05 per month. And then for internet, I spent $56.07 per month. In the Netherlands, I spent exactly zero because, again, I was staying in an Airbnb. And when you stay in an Airbnb, oftentimes you don't have to pay for.
Yeah, it's correct. Usually you would have, but now the price of the utilities are in the rent, and that's why the rent is higher at 1,300, almost 1,400. Yeah.
Those expenses. So if you're Dutch and you have your own apartment, you have your own house, if you're comfortable with doing this, if you're comfortable with revealing this information, is I would love if you could just provide a ballpark estimate for these different categories for your electricity bill, your water bill, and your internet bill so that I can have an accurate reference point.
Oh, but I can do that. We are on the internet. Let's take a look. Grabbing the right ones. So many windows open. Let's take, depending on which provider, but elektriciteit. Electricity price Netherlands. Seeing if he goes. It's the English version. Well, the average price is 33 cents kilowatt. Whole prices indicates wholesale electricity April 2025 was 74 hours per megawatt hour. Yeah, because we don't calculate, we have a price that's a price per kilowatt. So it's depending on how much you use, that's what you're going to pay at the end. If you have a lot of electricity usage, then you got to pay more. And if you are most of the time not at home, then you pay less. So there's not a fixed price. But on average, you can say that you pay about between, for a family of two, family of three, your price will be about 100 a month. Yeah. As saving up for the end result after a year, so 100 a month, 1,200 a year, and then you get the final price as all the kilowatts you have used, and based on that, you get your final bill, and then you have to pay, or you have to pay extra on the 1,200, or you get a return if you use less than the 1,200. So that's price. Water. I don't think we don't pay that water. Water prices. No. Trying two languages to each. No. Let's try Dutch. Drinking water. Terrace. €1. Yeah, let's say €1.13 per 1,000 liters. And it's the metric system. I don't know it's how much this is in gallons, but it's €1. And we see right down here, you have some rights you have to pay. So you have, let's say, the total of 106.28 per year with this. Are we going to have a total drinking water tariffs? Not those tariffs, the prices. With fast track operational costs. Yeah, it's all per year. So let's say you pay extremely 120 per year, which means 10 euros a month, roughly. But you get a bill per year. That's what you want to know. What else? Internet. Internet. Well, let's take the most popular KPN internet. Let's take a look. No, thank you. Internet and TV. First 9 months for €35 a month, and then afterwards 55. 55 a month for internet and TV. And then, of course, how much internet you want, which speed, etc., how much up and down speed. That's a 100 megabit up and down for first 9 months, €35, and then after that, €55. Yeah. And he's paying. Electricity will be the same as in United States. Water, it's more expensive in the United States than in the Netherlands. And internet, about the same.
For what the utilities are like in the Netherlands, because I have literally no clue. I would imagine that they're cheaper, but again, I have absolutely no idea. But when I tally the expenses up at the end, I'm going to assume, just for the sake of this video, that the utilities would have been exactly the same as they were in the US. Again, I have no idea if that would have been the case. Please drop in the comments what your utilities are if you're comfortable with sharing that information. But again, in the US, it was $142.19 per month. Now, let's get to the fun stuff. Let's talk about gasoline. So, obviously, if you have a car, you're going to need to gas it up. I spent on average $137.87 per month on gasoline. Now, by the way, if you've been following my channel since 2022, I just want to make this disclaimer. I'm talking about the Mazda CX-5 that I had because I feel like that's a better representation of the kind of car that more Americans would have. I'm not going to share the expenses for the BMW 3 Series that I had because most Americans are not going to drive a car like that, and it'll artificially inflate the monthly expenses. I know this from first-hand experience. This is a big part of the reason why I ended up living in my car. Different discussion for a different day.
Living up in your car. Damn. Wow.
$137.87 per month on gasoline for a Mazda CX-5 or similar. And that's living in Texas. In California, it will be much more than that. In New York, it'll probably be much more than that as well. In the Netherlands, I spent exactly $0 on gasoline.
Because he didn't needed a car and he did everything by public transport.
Why? Because I didn't have a car, because I didn't need one. I didn't need a car, so there was no need to spend money on gasoline. In fact, honestly, I don't even know how to pump gasoline in the Netherlands because I never needed to do it. I didn't even drive while I was there. Didn't even try to get my license because what's the point? You can cycle and take the train everywhere. And even to that point, if you add up the bus and the train, I don't have those numbers on hand right now, but I would imagine that it was probably around on a bad month. So on a month where I was taking the train and the bus very frequently, at most $40, maybe 50. Let's just say 50.
Yeah, okay.
So let's
Yeah.
say that instead of paying for gas, I spent money on the train.
Depends on where you live and where you have to go. $50 a month with a commute ticket, a daily commute ticket. Yeah, could be. Yeah,
And the bus. $50 per month. And again, that is being very, very pessimistic about how often I actually rode the train and the bus. Because truthfully, I probably took the bus maybe 2 or 3 times per month. And I took the train maybe once every other month, if that. I probably only took the train a few times in the 14 months that I was there. But let's just say, just to be kind to the US and level the playing field, that I was spending $50 per month on the public transit. So let me go ahead and add that into my expenses. Now, for a car payment, obviously, if you have a car, you're either going to need to buy it cash, which most people are not going to be able to do because the average American doesn't even have $1,000 saved up for emergencies. So they're going to have to finance a car or lease a car like I did with the BMW. But let's assume that they finance a car. My car payment was $359.61. And again, this is a fairly reasonable car payment. The car was, I want to say, $21,000 MSRP. 21,000. I financed it with I think $5,000 down. Really, really high interest rate, by the way.
for 20,000. Yeah, okay. I don't know what kind of car, as is new or a used one, because 20,000 for a used one is very expensive. You can get a car around here for five, six, seven. Nowadays, because my sister had one. Nowadays, you be around 10 to 11,000 to get a car. Yeah,
I want to say my interest rate was around 7 or 8%, maybe 9%. It was very, very high, and it's a big part of the reason why I was so adamant about selling the car the first opportunity that I got, was because I wanted to get away from that interest rate as quickly as humanly possible. But $359.61. And if I recall correctly, without that exorbitant interest rate, it would have been closer to $275 per month. And on top of that, I got some sort of extended warranty or some other add-on that I really didn't need. So again, probably closer to 275 a month for the average sensible person. In the Netherlands, that number was again zero.
yeah, okay, because you didn't need a car. But if you have to buy a completely new car, depending on what you want, and again, depending on what kind of a payment your salary is, etc., your car payment will be around 2 to 250 a month.
It was $0. Now, obviously, cars are not free in the Netherlands, and in some ways, car ownership can be more expensive in the Netherlands. But the caveat is you don't need a car. I can't even comment on what an average car payment would look like, or what the road tax would look like in the Netherlands, or what your average parking fees would be per month, because I didn't have a car, because you just don't need one.
Road tax, depending on the weight of your car, but on average, 150 every quarter. 150, 160 depends how heavy your car is. And if you have until 2026, if you have a fully electric car, no road tax will be taxed to you.
You don't need a car. This is why I'm always talking about the public transit and the cycling, is because it literally saves you so much money that it honestly, just thinking about it, kind of pisses me off to this day. But I digress. $359.61 per month in the US, or $275 per month if you want to be kind. $0 in the Netherlands. Now, what about car insurance? If you're going to have a car, you need car insurance.
€80 a month.
And at the time that I had that car, I was a young driver. And if you've never had car insurance as a young driver, just know that you are in for a rude awakening when you finally do get it. Because they were charging me $154.81 per month. And honestly, at the time, that was a very good deal. Because with the BMW, I was paying closer to $210 per month.
Yeah, as a starting driver with no build up, depending on the car you drive, the way of the car, and the kind of insurance you want, yeah, it will be about the same. 150 in the Netherlands.
Which still sends chills up my spine just thinking about it. But $154.81 per month. I don't know what car insurance would look like in the Netherlands because, again, I didn't have a car because I didn't need one. But my car insurance bill in the Netherlands was absolutely nothing. It was $0.00 euros, whatever currency. Doesn't matter because I didn't spend any money at all. If you're Dutch and you have a car and you're paying for a car insurance premium on a month by month basis, I would love to know, once again, in the comments, if you're comfortable revealing the information, how much money you are spending on that. Because I would imagine that the car insurance premiums would be a lot cheaper in the Netherlands because there are far fewer accidents in the Netherlands. And on top of that, cars themselves seem to be a lot cheaper. So, bearing all of this in mind, what is the average cost of living per month in the US compared to the Netherlands? And look, the Netherlands is actually one of the more expensive countries in Europe, believe it or not. So you go to a place like Spain or Portugal or
He's
somewhere
finish. He's finishing up, and what I'm missing in this entire row of expensive, and what I want to know, and maybe you can give me again in the comments, the price of your health insurance. I was hoping that he was telling me what the average health insurance is in the United States, and then we could compare it to what you would pay for your health insurance in the Netherlands or in Europe in average general average.
in maybe Eastern Europe, and you're going to be living for a lot cheaper than even the Netherlands. But
Yeah, if you go to Italy and Spain, those prices are lower. Yeah.
let's just go with the Netherlands because that's the country that I have the most experience with. In the US, for your average person, your cost of living per month comes out to $2,423.81. In the Netherlands, it comes out to $1,836.41. But again, if we add in the 50 for public transportation, that's $1,886.41. Let's round it up to $1,900 per month.
I would say 2000 because you have to utilities. He didn't know the utilities, but utilities are also a cost of living. So 2000. Yeah.
$1,900 per month. Again, just to sort of help close that gap a little bit. And let's round the US amount down to $2,400 per month. That is still a $500 per month difference. $500 per month difference. And again, for your average Dutch person, I would not be surprised, especially if they're living on their own, if the cost of living would be much lower than this. Now, I also didn't include entertainment expenses, dining out, and things like that, because those are things that I just don't do a whole lot of. I don't budget those things in. Those are more novelty experiences where if I just want to take my girlfriend out somewhere, then I just take her out somewhere. So I can't comment on the differences between dining out or going to the movies or things like that because my forms of entertainment are Netflix, YouTube, and the gym. And as far as the gym membership goes, in the Netherlands, it was around $15 per month to go to Basic Fit, which had all of the equipment that you could ever need in any gym. Here in the US, it was pretty similar when I had a gym membership here in the US before I went to the Netherlands. So around 15, 20 a month. So we'll just call that even. The point that I'm making is that Europe provides a higher quality of life for a lower cost of living. Which begs the question, why am I filming this video from here in the US? Honestly, I'm
Why? Oh, he's back to the US? After living abroad for 1 year. Oh, he's back to the US. Yeah, I wonder, why are you back?
only here because my sister is having her wedding here in the near future and we wanted to be there to attend it. But I have absolutely no intention of living here in the US long term. We booked round trip tickets. We don't know if we're going back to the Netherlands specifically because there are other countries, yet again, that provide even lower costs of living
Yeah,
than the Netherlands while still providing, I would say, just as high of a quality of life as at least the US. And again, the US, while it doesn't compare to Europe or the Netherlands specifically in terms of quality of life, is still not a bad country. It's just not as good as the way it markets itself to be. There are many worse places that you could be than the US. But the problem is that the US, again, not only markets itself as the best country in the world, but also it provides a lower quality of life by most objective metrics than a lot of European countries, while also charging a premium for this lower quality of life. So, why do people still live here? The reason why people still live here is because they have not watched this video and they're simply unaware of the fact that they can live a much better life for a much lower cost.
yeah, and I would agree with him. Watch this video is a good one, and then you watch his video at the same time. Yeah, that's because the previous video I posted was something about why aren't Americans moving to Europe? Well, because they don't know how good it is in Europe. Yeah, yeah. Okay, good, good video, good explanations, real numbers, real calculations. Sadly enough, I did not hear anything I was curious about because I don't know how it is with your health insurance, because that is also required in the United States and in the Netherlands. And then your health insurance is part of your job, and the health insurance is part of a certain region, and you can use a particular hospital and family doctors. So I was curious about that. So maybe I'm going to take the next video to look at how the health insurance is in the United States. If you learned something along with me, then like and subscribe if you want to see more videos about the US and me reacting to it. And I will see you in the next video.